For 11 years, I believed trust was the strongest part of our marriage. Emily and I had built a quiet life together, sharing dreams, paying bills, laughing over terrible movies, and promising we'd always be honest with each other. But during the last few months, something had changed. She started staying late at work almost every evening, always claiming another project had landed on her desk. Whenever I asked if everything was okay, she'd smile and call me sweet. Yet the moment I asked a second question, where she had been, who she was with, or why she ignored my calls, her expression hardened. "You're becoming controlling, Daniel," she'd snap. Those words hurt more than she realized, because I wasn't trying to control her. I was trying to understand why my wife suddenly felt like a stranger living in my house. The accusations didn't stop there. Every concern I raised became another example of my supposed insecurity. If I noticed she was texting someone late at night, I was paranoid. If I mentioned she smelled like unfamiliar perfume after work, I was imagining things. Even my suggestion that we spend one weekend together without phones somehow turned into proof that I wanted to isolate her. Friends started looking at me differently after Emily casually joked that I checked on her too much. I laughed along, pretending it didn't bother me, but deep inside, I felt something slipping away. I wasn't losing arguments anymore. I was losing my own confidence. Maybe she was right. Maybe I really had become suspicious for no reason. That thought haunted me until one tiny detail changed everything. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Emily rushed into the shower after returning home unusually early, leaving her smartwatch charging on the kitchen counter. I had never touched her devices before, and I had no intention of starting. Then the screen lit up with a notification. It wasn't a romantic message or anything dramatic. It simply read, "Same cafe tomorrow? I'll reserve our usual table. Ryan." My stomach tightened. Ryan wasn't a family friend. He wasn't someone I'd ever heard her mention. What caught my attention wasn't just a message. It was a phrase, "our usual table." How many times had they met for there to be a usual table? When Emily walked back into the kitchen, I casually asked if she knew anyone named Ryan. She froze for barely a second before answering too quickly. "Just someone from accounting." "Why?" Then she picked up the watch and changed the subject immediately. That single moment refused to leave my mind. The next morning, instead of driving directly to work, I parked across the street from Emily's office. I hated myself for doing it, but my instinct screamed louder than my guilt. At lunchtime, employees began leaving the building in small groups. Then I saw Emily. She wasn't alone. A tall man wearing a navy blue shirt walked beside her, laughing as though they'd shared hundreds of private jokes. He gently touched her shoulder while speaking, and she didn't pull away. Instead of entering the company cafeteria, they crossed the street together to a quiet cafe hidden between two office buildings. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the traffic. This had to be Ryan. I waited outside, telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Coworkers had lunch together all the time. But 45 minutes later, they were still inside, sitting in the corner booth, smiling in a way that looked far too personal. For the next week, I became someone I barely recognized. Every lunch break, every late meeting, every excuse Emily gave me seemed to lead back to Ryan. Sometimes they met at the cafe. Other times they walked through a nearby park before returning separately to the office. They were careful enough that nothing looked openly romantic to anyone passing by. But there was an intimacy between them that couldn't be explained away. One afternoon, I watched Ryan hand her a small gift bag wrapped with blue ribbon. Emily smiled brighter than she had smiled at me in months. She tucked the bag into her purse before looking around nervously. It was the first time I noticed fear in her eyes. She wasn't afraid of Ryan. She was afraid someone else might see them together. That realization hit me like ice water. I wanted to confront her immediately, but something inside me whispered that I still didn't know the whole truth. If Emily had spent months convincing everyone I was controlling, accusing her now without undeniable proof would only strengthen her story. So I stayed silent and kept watching. Then, on Friday evening, another opportunity appeared. Emily announced she had to attend an emergency client meeting after work and wouldn't be home until midnight. I nodded without arguing, though every instinct told me she was lying. Instead of returning home, I followed her car from a safe distance. She didn't drive toward the business district or any office building. She headed to the same quiet cafe where Ryan was already waiting outside. As they greeted each other, he handed her a sealed envelope. Emily opened it, glanced inside, and her face instantly lost all color. Before I could understand what was happening, she looked over her shoulder with panic written across her face, directly toward the parking lot where I was hiding. Emily's terrified eyes swept across the parking lot, lingering for a brief second in my direction before she quickly looked away. My heart pounded so hard I thought they might hear it from across the street. Had she seen me? I ducked lower in my seat and watched as Ryan calmly placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Instead of leaving, they hurried inside the cafe with the envelope still clutched tightly in Emily's hands. I waited nearly 20 minutes before quietly entering. They were seated in a private corner, their voices too low to hear. I slipped into a booth behind a decorative divider, just close enough to catch fragments of their conversation. "He can't know yet," Emily whispered. Ryan nodded. "Once everything is finalized, you'll tell him." My pulse raced. Finalized? Tell me what? Every possible explanation that entered my mind was worse than the last. Unable to endure the uncertainty any longer, I stepped out from behind the divider. "Maybe you should tell me now." The color drained from Emily's face, while Ryan immediately stood between us, as if expecting a fight. Customers turned to stare, but I didn't care. Months of confusion, accusations, and sleepless nights exploded into a single question. "Who is he to you?" Emily opened her mouth, yet no words came out. Ryan slowly placed the envelope on the table and pushed it toward me. Inside were legal papers, not love letters, not hotel receipts, not vacation plans. They were documents showing that Emily had secretly invested nearly all of our savings into a risky technology startup where Ryan was a minority partner. She had forged my electronic approval on several financial forms because she knew I would never agree to such a dangerous investment. The betrayal struck harder than any affair could have. She hadn't simply hidden meetings with another man. She had gambled away the financial future we had spent more than a decade building together. Tears rolled down Emily's cheeks as she admitted the truth. Ryan had convinced her the company would triple its value within months. She wanted the investment to become a surprise that would allow us to pay off our mortgage early. But the business had collapsed only weeks after she transferred the money. Nearly everything was gone. The envelope Ryan handed her contained the final bankruptcy notice. Every late night, every secret meeting, every accusation that I was controlling had been an attempt to hide the disaster she had created. Calling me controlling had become the easiest way to stop me from asking questions she couldn't answer. I stared at her in complete silence. The lies suddenly made perfect sense. The late office meetings had really been desperate conversations about recovering the money. The hidden phone calls were discussions with lawyers. The mysterious gift bag I had seen Ryan give her contained financial records, not jewelry. My imagination had spent weeks painting the picture of an emotional affair, yet the truth was a different kind of betrayal, one built on deception, fear, and pride instead of romance. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally asked. Emily broke down completely. "Because I was ashamed. Every day I planned to confess, and every day it became harder. I thought if I fixed everything first, you'd never have to know." Her voice trembled with regret, but the damage had already been done. Over the following weeks, we met with financial advisors, attorneys, and counselors. Recovering the money proved impossible, but rebuilding trust was even harder. Every conversation forced us to confront the same painful reality. A marriage cannot survive when honesty is replaced with fear. Emily accepted full responsibility for her choices. She apologized not only for hiding the investment, but also for making me question my own judgment by labeling every concern as controlling. She admitted that those words had become a shield, allowing her to avoid accountability while pushing me further away. Hearing that confession brought a strange sense of relief, yet forgiveness remained a slow and uncertain journey. Trust, once broken, cannot be repaired with a single apology. A year later, our lives looked very different. We had downsized to a smaller home, worked extra hours, and slowly rebuilt our finances from the ground up. Some friends assumed our marriage ended because of infidelity, But the real story was far more complicated. The greatest betrayal wasn't another relationship. It was a decision to replace truth with lies until those lies became impossible to escape. Looking back, I realized that love doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes one secret at a time. And whenever someone dismisses honest questions by calling their partner controlling instead of answering them with openness, they may not just be hiding the truth. They may be destroying the very trust that keeps a marriage alive.